Fast X's surprise cameo has left audiences rocked. Does this herald a new direction for the franchise's end, or does it mark a return to the Fast family's roots? Spoilers ahead. The off-screen rivalry between Vin Diesel and Dwayne Johnson is no secret. After starring in 3 franchise installments together, Johnson returned once more for the 8th feature, The Fate of the Furious. Following the film's release, both Johnson and Diesel alluded to some serious on-set tension. That continued to bubble into the production of the next installment. But instead of continuing to star opposite one another, Johnson was given the reins to the first and only Fast and Furious spin-off, Hobbs Shaw, where he starred opposite Jason Statham. Diesel continued on with F9, which neglected to even mention Hobbs, though Statham's Shaw appeared in a mid-credit scene. Despite the high tensions between these two megastars, Johnson returns to the franchise in a post-credits cameo for Fast X. After 2019's Hobbs Shaw and Johnson's previous comments about not returning to the Fast family, many thought the character was gone for good. Things seemed especially dire when Johnson ignored Diesel's social media peace offering when he asked a former WWE superstar to return to the franchise for the sake of the fans. With Hobbs' return, maybe the feud between Johnson and Diesel is finally over. Due to their past, it's unlikely that Johnson would work with Diesel again if things off-screen hadn't changed, giving us hope for Fast and Furious 11. With Fast and Furious Presents Hobbs & Shaw, Johnson and Statham showed their characters' potential to headline a major motion picture without Diesel's Dom Toretto and family. In fact, the film expanded on the Fast and Furious universe, introducing the techno-terrorist organization Etion, a superhuman Brixton Law, and the extended families of both titular action heroes. While these additions might not seem like much outside of the context of Hobbs & Shaw, there's a possibility that they may have some serious ramifications on the franchise at large, especially as Johnson and Statham return to mainline the Fast saga. Since the introduction of Kurt Russell's Mr. Nobody in Furious 7, the franchise has shifted from street races and extensive car heists to global espionage and world-ending threats. Hobbs & Shaw was no different, revealing that Etion is in control of many of the world's media outlets, with goals of global domination. Since Hobbs left the Toretto crew to continue enforcing law and order elsewhere, bringing some of that back with him isn't out of the question. Though Etion hasn't shown up in the Fast saga yet, the return of Hobbs could reveal that he's on the criminal organization's tail, especially after the mysterious director's threats.
You don't remember me, do you, Hobbs? You will.
Likewise, the introduction of Hobbs' extended family of warriors in his spin-off feature may end up factoring into the 11th installment somehow. After all, this franchise is about family. That said, it might be a bit jarring for the events of a spin-off film to factor into the swan song of a franchise 10 mainline movies deep. So we'll just have to wait and see. Speaking of Hobbs & Shaw, initial sequel talks were had following the release of the Fast and Furious spin-off, but we haven't heard much about a continuation since. Though Johnson seems confident that another installment would be made, it seems as if the folks at Universal Pictures have been hyper-focused on closing out the Fast saga first. With 2021's F9 and 2023's Fast X both coming out since Johnson and Statham's buddy flick, it's clear that the studio's priorities lie elsewhere, at least for now. In 2022, producer Kelly McCormick confirmed to comicbook.com that though they'd love to make another Hobbs & Shaw in the future, there are, quote, no conversations at this time. But that was then, and this is now. With Johnson's return for Fast X and likely the 11th Fast Saga film as well, maybe this is The Rock's way of reigniting interest in his character after a few years of silence. No doubt after the box office bomb that was Black Adam, Johnson's venture into the DC Comics superhero space, the megastar is likely attempting to revisit his known successes. Since his time as Luke Hobbs has always led to high box office returns, coming back to the Fast Saga seems like the right move after failing to restructure the hierarchy of power in the DC universe. Since Johnson's departure following the Fate of the Furious, the series has brought along another WWE champion into their ranks. In F9, John Cena serves as the primary antagonist, playing Dom Toretto's long-lost brother, Jacob. Over the course of the film, Dom and Jacob make amends, leading to the latter's return for Fast X, in which he helps save his nephew from Dom's latest antagonist, Dante Reyes. Though Jacob seemingly gives his life for his family, it's hard to say what the future holds. After all, even death can't stop characters from returning to the Toretto family again and again. All that is to say, Jacob and Hobbs, played by two WWE legends, may finally meet in the Fast and Furious franchise. With the way Fast X honors previous franchise installments and the occasionally non-linear nature of the Fast saga as a whole, it's entirely possible that Luke Hobbs and Jacob Toretto could have met sometime in the not-too-distant past. Or maybe even the Fast and Furious franchise isn't big enough for two WWE heroes to coexist in it at the same time. In its fourth outing, 2009's Fast and Furious, the series returned to its street racing and criminal roots, reuniting Vin Diesel's Dom and Paul Walker's Brian for a brand new adventure. Then when 2011's Fast 5 was released, the franchise was reborn through a series of extensive heists and new cast members who helped rebuild the series into something bigger and better. Dwayne Johnson was one of those cast members, and his character, Luke Hobbs, introduced new opportunities to the Toretto crew that kept them racing for years. In fact, Hobbs is the guy to take out Fast 5 antagonist Hernan Reyes, so bringing The Rock back for Fast X, itself a direct continuation of Fast 5, only makes sense. As Jason Momoa's Dante Reyes plans to destroy those who killed his father, Fast X reveals that Hobbs likewise is a target. However, the 11th installment shapes up, the events of Fast 5, considered one of the best in the franchise, are still propelling the overall series plot forward. By bringing Hobbs back, it shows that the filmmakers behind the multi-part finale are hoping to honor the franchise to its core, giving each and every character their due diligence. He is hoping that more familiar faces will return for Fast and Furious 11. For years, the name Dwayne Johnson has brought in the big bucks. Between his chiseled features and intense charisma, the former WWE star certainly knows how to entertain a diverse crowd. Having ventured into comedies, action films, superhero productions, and animated features, there are very few genres that The Rock hasn't attempted to break into. Sure, he's had some bombs along the way, but generally speaking, franchises like Fast and Furious and Jumanji have been massive hits for the wrestler turned movie star. To this day, Furious 7 is still the actor's highest-grossing picture, having brought in $1.5 billion worldwide. No wonder he'd eventually make a furious comeback with the series that's brought him the most success. We're just surprised that he didn't do it faster.
Daddy's gotta go to work.
Needless to say, Johnson's 4 Fast Saga installments and his Hobbs & Shaw solo venture have done tremendously well, bringing in new audiences along the way. With Johnson's return to the franchise, plus the additional novelty of these films being the beginning of the end for the series as we know it, the likelihood of high box office returns is high. Recent Fast and Furious installments have made it a point to highlight the children of the most popular characters in the series. In Fate of the Furious, Dom was introduced to his son with Elena, who he later named Brian. Similarly, Hobbs & Shaw highlights Hobbs' daughter Sam, and Brian and Mia's children are mentioned on more than one occasion throughout the last few films. Yes, found family is the bedrock of the Fast Saga, but the next generation matters too. In fact, the non-canon animated series Fast and Furious Spy Racers is all about a younger generation of operatives led by Dom's cousin Tony, as they use fast cars to save the world. By bringing Hobbs back into the fold and giving Fast X an emphasis on fathers and their children, Johnson's return might mark a new era for the Fast Saga. While the story of Dom's crew may end soon, that doesn't mean the Fast and Furious franchise will officially fade to black. Instead, it's possible that a new series featuring the Toretto gang's kids may be developed in the future. Since the end of Fast 5, this franchise has made it clear that death isn't the end for many of our recurring heroes. From Letty's survival after a apparent murder in the 4th film, to Han surviving his explosive end in Tokyo Drift, there's no telling who could come back in the future. Even characters like Sean Boswell from Tokyo Drift, who made his return via a cameo in Furious 7 before officially reappearing in F9, find themselves reuniting with Dom and his crew at some point down the line. With that in mind, Johnson's return as Hobbs, as unlikely as it seemed, isn't exactly surprising. After Fast X, it's a wonder who else might return in the future. The final chapters of the Fast Saga shouldn't be overstuffed, but Hobbs re-entering the family means the door is open for other characters to get back behind the wheel. In the past, Dwayne Johnson has received top billing for his Fast and Furious appearances alongside Vin Diesel and Paul Walker. Though the latter two are clearly the stars of the franchise, Johnson has doggedly attempted to carve out a clear slice of the Fast Saga pie for himself. No doubt this led to the initial feud between Johnson and Diesel. But now that the hatchet seems to be buried, there may be hope for fans who want to see more of Hobbs. While Johnson's return could very well lead to more Hobbs & Shaw movies going forward, it's not necessarily impossible that Hobbs Johnson could take center stage in future Fast and Furious movies. Since Hobbs already tried that during the Fate of the Furious, it wouldn't be a surprise to see him leading the group going forward. Obviously, no one can replace Dom, but that doesn't mean that the Fast and Furious brand couldn't live on without him.
Always here.
Diesel didn't appear at all in Paul Walker's sequel, Too Fast, Too Furious, and he only had a small cameo in Tokyo Drift. Admittedly, there hasn't been a second mainline Fast Saga movie yet that doesn't feature Diesel in some capacity, but it's at least a possibility that Johnson could carry the Fast and Furious torch once Dom's story is finally done.